It is 20 minutes after 3 o'clock, and right now in downtown Winnipeg, we're sitting at minus 17 degrees, minus 21 with the wind chill, but that's okay. We're hardy folk. I only wish that the weather was better for our very special guest in the studio here, the wonderful, beloved Canadian pianist, Angela Hewitt. Welcome to the Diamond Lane.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
As I said before, we've been wanting to have you on since the beginning, since we launched. So finally.
Finally, here I am. And I have typical Winnipeg weather, so that's fine.
Well, you know.
The sun is shining, so that's the most important.
So, Angela Hewitt, you are here this weekend. You've got a jam-packed weekend performing with the WSO and with Virtuosi. Mm-hmm. Do you want to start with telling us a bit about the programs that we'll be hearing this weekend?
Sure. Well, starting tonight at 8 o'clock, we're doing the program with the orchestra, with the Winnipeg Symphony, and guest conductor Benjamin Volfish. And I'm playing two different pieces in the program, before and after intermission. Before, by Manuel de Falla, a wonderful Spanish composer. We're doing his piece Nights in the Gardens of Spain, and it's for a very big orchestra. So it's really it's a good orchestral piece with a very important piano part, but the piano is also sort of treated as part of the orchestra, although I'm out front, of course. But it's wonderful. I adore it. I mean, it was one of the party pieces of the famous Spanish pianist Alicia de la Rocha, who was one of my heroes when I was growing up, and I had the great fortune to hear her live many times and meet her, as she was a friend of my teacher, Jean-Paul Sevilla. And so I love the Spanish repertoire, and I first played this, I guess, just 2 years ago, but I'm playing it quite often now. So I think that people will really love it because it's, got all the poetry and the Spanish temperament and the pride and the melancholy, and you have to be a bit of an actor to play this piece. And then after intermission, something quite different, really. Although they knew each other, certainly de Falla and Ravel. De Falla lived in Paris at one time, but Ravel, his G major Piano Concerto, which was one of the last pieces he wrote for piano, and one of my favorites. I've played it since I was 15 years old. In fact, I played it here in Winnipeg before, I think about 25 years ago. I write in my score when and where I've played the pieces, and I have written Winnipeg, but not a date. I must look it up or ask somebody in the office. Anyway, but it's great to be playing it again, and as I say, it's one of my favorites. I play the complete works of Ravel for keyboard, for piano. It has a gorgeous, gorgeous slow movement, which opens with the piano alone for several minutes. And it's very much influenced by jazz in the outer movements. You'll hear that quite plainly. And so it's very important to have that jazz rhythm in you, and but also it's very clearly written, very precise, but just bubbles over, with joy and excitement and this jazz influence. So I mean, it's a real it's a terrific piece for both the people playing and the audience. I think very demanding on the orchestra. There are harp solos, there's a trumpet solo, there's an English horn solo, but you have great musicians here. Those three especially are really playing well. So, they have to work very hard.
What is it like for you to play in front of an orchestra as opposed to doing a solo recital?
Well, it's totally different, really. I mean, when I play a solo recital, as I will be on Sunday afternoon, that's just me. It's repertoire that I especially want to, present at this time, and that it's a whole creation, a recital from beginning to end, from the first note to the last, really, and the way I plan a program. And so that's a real statement, a personal statement. When you play with the orchestra, there's so many different factors involved. I mean, me, the orchestra, the conductor, one has much less time. I mean, I think maybe in total we might have had, for the two pieces, 2 hours, to rehearse them in total over yesterday and today. So maybe a bit more. But I mean, whereas the repertoire that I'm performing on Sunday afternoon, I've worked on for years and years, or hours and hours and hours, it's totally different. But I mean, in a professional situation with the orchestra, the conductor and soloist, you work as best you can and as quickly as you can. And And it has to be a real effort on everybody's part to make it as good as you can in the time you have. So it's a challenge, but it can be a great one and very exciting.
Do you psych yourself up differently as opposed to doing like a solo concert?
Oh, well, no. I mean, well, every performance is important, no matter where it is or what you're playing. Every time you walk on stage, you have to, really try to do your best and be as prepared as you can and enjoy it. But of course, with the concerto, as I said, there are things that don't depend on you. So with the recital, it's all you for better or for worse. When you're playing alone, you're there alone. That's it.
Well, the Virtuosi concert, as we've mentioned here many times, has been sold out for weeks. So if you have tickets, consider yourself lucky. Enjoy the concert, that's for sure. You talked a bit about one of your favorite pianists. Tell me more about Alicia and what was it like meeting her?
Well, I guess it was when I was studying in Ottawa with this French pianist, Sevilla, who was also a Spanish blood, and so he knew Alicia, and he took us to some of his students to Toronto. We drove, the 5 hours from Ottawa to Toronto, and then back in the night to hear her in the old Massey Hall. I remember her playing the complete suite of Iberia by Albéniz, and I heard her play it in Paris also when I lived there in the 1980s. Late 70s, 80s. And they just remain some of my most vivid memories of hearing a pianist live. But she was a master of that repertoire. I mean, she had studied it, Granadas, she had, I think, practically studied it with him or played it. No, Frank Marshall was her teacher, so he had studied with Granadas, yeah. So, I mean, it's really from the horse's mouth. But she played it with such ease, this tremendously difficult music, and with the right idiom, of course, which is very important to capture. So, and I just admired her because, I mean, she worked so hard. Her international career didn't really start until she was maybe into her 40s, although she had always played, of course, and was very popular in Spain, but her international career took off quite late. And she worked so hard and toured so hard and, was never at home. But, I mean, she was an example to a female artist of what it takes, really.
Well, we've just come off of International Women's Day this week on Wednesday. And so I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what it is like to be a woman in the classical music world. And I mean, I don't see much difference between you and Alicia de la Rocha in terms of working so hard and touring. And what's the experience been like for you?
Well, you have to work like crazy. They don't tell young pianists in school that it's going to mean most of your life alone, traveling around alone, eating in restaurants alone, practicing 8 hours a day alone, traveling in planes alone. And so you have to be able to take that, I think. I mean, these days it's a little bit different with email and everything and the immediacy of communication. You can have Skype conversations or whatever. When I started out, there was none of that. When we graduated to fax, I thought that was incredible. You got a fax into the door when you were in Australia. That was a big moment, But now there's all this email stuff. So that has made it a bit easier. I would say less lonely anyway on the road. But you have to have incredible strength. And, I don't like to dwell on it, but I mean, there are situations where I know that if I were a guy, that yes, I would have played there already, for sure. Mm-hmm. Or, I wouldn't have had to insist so much on a fee or something. But I don't like to dwell on it too much because there are other more important things to dwell on. But I mean, I'm very happy if I think women still need to fight for that, for sure. Mm-hmm. Pay equality and everything. There's no reason why it shouldn't be equal. Absolutely not. So, but it is harder, I think, for women because when you have a life on the road, there are not so many. It means that you can't really have so much of a personal life. But it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, but worth it. I mean,
yes, it's worth it.
What a career you have, and the name that you've made for yourself on the world classical music scene. And from a selfish point of view, we would not have your amazing playing. And so bravo to you.
I'm not complaining for a minute.
Please don't change a thing.
Life. Well, I don't know about that. Anyway, no, but
Well,
I love it.
with everything that you've learned over the years, what advice would you have for a young artist just starting out?
Yeah. Well, that it's not all handed to you on a silver platter. That, there are some cases when young artists are taken up by a record label, by an agent, by a conductor, usually for non-musical reasons. Not because their playing is so extraordinary, but because they have the right name or their image is good or whatever. But if you don't have, I don't know if I would call that a fortune, a good luck, but if you don't have that road, then you have to work at it yourself. Don't wait for the phone to ring. Create your own opportunities. When I was starting out and went to live in London in 1985, after I'd won already the big Bach competition in Toronto, I still wrote out all the envelopes to friends, everybody I could think of, to get them to come to hear me in Wigmore Hall. I would design my own concert leaflets with the person who helped. But I've always put in a tremendous amount of energy into my own career. And I think you really need to do that, especially these days.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Angela, it's been such a pleasure having you in the studio. We could talk all afternoon, actually, and we would have lots to talk about. I'm going to play some music right now because you are going to. I've got two choices here.
Okay.
I'm going to let you make the choices. So I thought because you are going to play Ravel this weekend, that I would bring up some music from Ravel that you've recorded from Gaspard de la Nuit, the Ondine.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Or we also have some Rameau, which you won't be performing, but something a little different. His suite in E minor.
Yeah.
What should we play?
Oh, well, since I'm playing Ravel tonight, let's hear Ondine. That used to be one of my big party pieces. I played in competitions, Gaspard de la Nuit. I haven't played it for a while, but let's hear that because it's the water nymph and very poetic and all this shimmering light right from the beginning that you'll hear. Just the colors you can produce from piano, very important to get that right.
Angela Hewitt, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Break a leg with all of your performances.
Sure. Thank you.
Angela Hewitt performing this evening with the WSO and tomorrow night. You can still get tickets, wso.ca. Both concerts start at 8 o'clock at the Centennial Concert Hall. And then Sunday afternoon with Virtuosi. I'm sorry, guys, sold out. If you have tickets, good for you. Enjoy. Have a wonderful time. And with that, we will listen to the wonderful Angela Hewitt and some Ravel from Gaspard de la Nuit.